All right, and welcome back to part 2 of day 75. So we'll continue on with our nervous system. Hope you had a good stretch there. Okay, so when we look at the nervous system, as we mentioned before, it's organized different ways, both by its parts and by its functions. Some functions are spread across multiple parts, which can make it a little bit confusing, but we'll kind of keep it relatively simple, relatively easy to understand. But if you've got questions, reach out to me and we'll go ahead and answer those in the discussion section on there. So nervous system, key kind of division of the physical parts breaks it up into what we call the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord. You can kind of see some of the information about there. This is really kind of where your body is processing that information that's come in and uses what's going on in your brain and your spinal cord, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes consciously, about how to react to that information that comes in. And then if we kind of flip that over, you've got what we call the peripheral nervous system. So kind of going back, we've got our central nervous system, and we've got our peripheral nervous system. So our peripheral nervous system consists of two major things that we call the sensory neurons. That's really where information comes into the body, so we sense things in the world around us, or we use it to sense like our internal temperature or how thirsty we are. Right? So that's new information coming in. And that goes through the peripheral nervous system to our central nervous system where we think about it and make a choice. And we're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then it goes back out to the peripheral nervous system to the motor neurons where we now are going to go ahead and make changes to our muscles or our glands or something that's going to cause that to happen. Sometimes we can do that voluntarily, like I can intentionally lift my arm or my foot, and sometimes we do it automatically. We don't have to think about it, right? And then that automatic part is actually even split into further areas called the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. You can see fight or flight or rest or digest kind of going on down there. Yeah. So the central nervous system, again, is two main sections. We've got the brain. All right, this is the big chunk of material that kind of floats around inside your skull there. Close to a lot of our primary sense organs. So if you think about, well, how do I detect what's going on in the world? Well, I see things, or I smell things, or I taste things, or I hear things, right? Even balance all occurs in your ears, so all of this is happening inside your head. Sight, smell, taste, hearing, all that's happening inside your head there. Some things like a sense of touch or a sense of temperature, that can happen elsewhere in your body, but again, ultimately relays back to your brain there. But spinal cord is the other thing that provides communication between the brain and the rest of your body. So this is kind of a major processing bit, but the spinal cord serves as a gateway for information going in and out. But your spinal cord actually makes decisions on its own, sometimes without consulting the brain, which we'll see. Okay. So parts of the brain, there's two hemispheres. So here we're looking at a view from the rear. So this would be like the back of somebody's skull. And then we have a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. You can see this division that kind of splits down the middle right there. So we have a right hemisphere here, left hemisphere here, and then we have this region of tissue that bridges those two hemispheres. And so it allows the right hemisphere to talk to the left hemisphere and the left hemisphere to talk to the right hemisphere. Now in certain situations, they'll actually go and they'll do a surgery where they will sever that corpus callosum. They will cut that so the two hemispheres aren't talking to each other. And I've got a link to it over here if you want to watch a video about a guy who had his corpus callosum severed because of epilepsy issues. It's kind of interesting. He essentially kind of is walking around with two fully functional brains that can't talk to each other inside of his head. It's kind of weird. Okay. So there's a corpus callosum that connects the two hemispheres there. Okay. So if we look at from the side, so here we're looking at the side of somebody that it would be looking like their nose would be over to the left over here. This would be the back of the skull over on the right here. So if you take your hand, put your hand kind of right on your forehead just above your eyes and wrap your fingers up towards the top of your head, that's pretty much all the frontal lobe here. And that's associated with evaluating consequences, making judgments, forming plans. And you may have heard of something called the prefrontal cortex. That's the very, very frontmost part of the frontal lobe. That doesn't really reach maturity until about 20 to 25. So your ability to evaluate consequences prior to that is less than that of people who are 20, 25 or older. So when people say, like, why do you make those decisions you make when you're a teenager? Well, sometimes it's because you can't actually process them. So kind of interesting thing there. Next is kind of just up from our ears and back a little bit is what we call the temporal lobe. This is associated with hearing, not surprisingly, but also with smell. And then kind of moving on further back. So if you feel kind of, this would be like the back of your skull down here. If you feel just up a little bit, that's the occipital lobe, and that's actually associated with the vision. So your eyeballs would be down to the left here, and then they would actually run through to the back of the brain there. So sometimes if people are in a car accident or they hit their head, they'll actually experience temporary blindness because that occipital lobe will get bruised as that brain jars back and forth inside the skull there. And then in between the occipital lobe and the frontal lobe, we have what's called the parietal lobe. It kind of runs kind of midway in the back of the skull towards the back there. And that's associated with really with language, speech, and reading. Kind of all that goes on there. So if you get a chance, go ahead and point those out on your own skull. What are those different particular lobes? And then it's also worth noting there's one other part here called the cerebellum. And this is involved in a lot of your body's processing, like where it actually is. Like how do I know where my hand is relative to my nose or my elbow or whatever it is. This is why you can close your eyes and touch your finger to your nose. It's because the cerebellum knows where those body parts are. So it's information about where everything kind of goes. Okay, moving on. Okay. So here's just kind of some visuals of looking at different brains. As we mentioned, the occipital lobe, you can kind of see it working with the brain, eyes going through there, and then in the middle here, this is kind of a view through. You actually have these hollow parts in your brain here, and that's showing it in blue right there. They're ventricles. And then this is just showing those different lobes of the brain. You can see them kind of highlighted in different colors there. So see if you can go ahead and name the brain parts. What was that bridge that connected the two? What do we call each half of the brain? And then we've got our different lobes here. So you can name those 4 lobes of that part, and then this other part down here. You can pause the video if you want. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Okay. So outside of the brain and spinal cord, we have what we call the peripheral nervous system. And these are everything that's not part of that. And there's a lot of peripheral nerves. You can see them kind of listed on here. Some of them people may have heard of, like a condition called sciatica. It's a pinching of the sciatic nerve, or you have these nerves that run through down into your hands. The region called the carpal tunnel region, so the pinching of that carpal tunnel syndrome. All right, so, but the ones that we're going to focus on, we're just going to focus on 2. So the cranial nerves. This group up here, they run through the skull and they stimulate regions of the head and neck, and they allow you to kind of blink and smile and talk and all that kind of good stuff, move your head around. And then the other ones we want to look at is just kind of everything below that. All of these other ones, we'll just kind of collectively group them together and call them spinal nerves because they all come out of the spine and they interact with the spine. So cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Those are 2 big divisions that we'll deal with. Okay. So peripheral nervous system, you can see some of the sensory parts of it. These are the things that are going to be detecting the world around us and within our body. Different types of receptors that we've got, both chemical receptors detect chemicals, so like smell and taste. Photoreceptors to detect light, that also be in our eyes. Mechanoreceptors, mechanical, so they detect touch, pressure, vibrations, and so on. You know, in your skin, your ligaments, your tendons, to tell where your body is. Thermoreceptors to detect temperature, so as the skin. It's also a part of your brain called the hypothalamus, and it detects body temperature. And then pain receptors for tissue injury. They're just kind of all throughout the body. Ironically, we actually don't have any pain receptors in your own brain, so when they do brain surgery, one of the things they actually do is they keep you awake so they can talk to you and make sure they're not hurting you because you can't feel it. You're not like, oh, that hurts. There's no pain receptors in the brain. Okay. Motor division, as we mentioned, the motor division is after we process information through our sensory system, send it to our central nervous system, decide what we're going to do. That message gets sent back out through the motor division. That transmits impulses away from the central nervous system to either muscles or glands. So this would be where that axon terminal comes down and connects to a muscle or connects to a gland. If it connects to a muscle, it'll cause muscles to move. If it connects to a gland, it'll cause it to secrete more or less of a particular hormone. causing the body to do whatever it's going to do there. And then you can see the motor neuron, motor division kind of goes in here. I will mention there is this thing called the afferent and efferent. It just means sensory or motor. Don't worry about the afferent and efferent terms. We'll just use sensory and motor there. And again, you can kind of see the things going into the body, where it processes it, and then comes back out. It goes out that way. Okay. So somatic, autonomic, if we look down here, somatic and autonomic. So the somatic things are the things that we are under conscious control, such as the movement of our arms or legs. Autonomic are the things that we don't really consciously think about, like heart rate or digestive tract. You don't have to think about, okay, stomach, do your thing now, like squish my food, like it just does it without us thinking about it. Somatic, there is a part of the somatic system called the reflex arc. So this is signals that go just to the spinal cord and back out. So in this case, they show that your person's walking along and they trip over something, so that signal is going to go up the sensory receptor into the spinal cord. There's another little nerve called an interneuron here, and then it goes, okay, there's something happening, and it sends the signal back out through the motor neuron, causing the leg to adjust accordingly. So this is if you go to the doctor and they tap you on the knee, one of the things they're testing to see is that reflex arc, is that working appropriately? Is your spine seem to be healthy? Some people have highly reactive reflexes, some people don't. Not really sure why, but that's one of the things that they're looking for there, is what's going to go on there. But a key thing to note is that that information never really makes its way up to your brain. Your brain never makes a conscious decision on it. So we actually can do quite a bit of thinking, so to speak, with our spinal cord. Okay. And then within the autonomic system, we have two modes that our body kind of operates. You can think of them as kind of the restful mode or the anxious mode. So the parasympathetic is this side over here. So we're getting ready to eat, so we're producing lots of saliva. We're resting, our heart rate slows down. Stimulates peristalsis, which is a contraction of the intestines to kind of move food through there. Our liver, that's this purple thing here, is going to release bile to help break down food. Our bladder will contract in case we have to urinate. But if things are kind of, we sense danger real quickly, we're going to be like, oh no. And the sympathetic is going to kick into play, and this prepares the body for fight or flight. So pupils will dilate to allow more light in, saliva will slow down, and our heart rate will accelerate, our bronchi and our lungs will open up to allow more oxygen in, we'll stop kind of all the digestive stuff, because we don't want the blood to be going there, we want the blood to be going to our muscles instead. So the parasympathetic and sympathetic kind of work in opposition to each other. Your body normally kind of drifts towards parasympathetic, and then something will startle it, or you'll hear something, you'll read something, and it'll make you a little more anxious. And the sympathetic will take over real quickly and kind of prepare your body to do what it needs to do. All right. So that one. But if we've got, so we had questions, they're similar to the questions that we had before. So go ahead and I'm going to pause here. But you can on your own go to the slideshow on Canvas and answer these questions so you can identify, the parts of the neuron, or answer the questions, fight or flight mode, what's that associated with. So there's several questions there. I'll let you look at them at your own pace. And again, we're finishing up part 2 of day 75. All right, so long.